Negotiating with your kids can feel a bit like grappling with a mad March hare. You know the situation. You want to get them to tidy their room, or to put on their coat and boots, or to just to finish their meal. And the problem is they sense your desperation. That's when the battle ensues. They say no, they assert their power. And well, you know it's going to end in tears, and sometimes the kids might even end up crying too. So there has to be a better way. And the good news is, well, there is a better way, and all of the techniques that I talk about in all other aspects of negotiation work when you need to get your kids to cooperate. The fact is that needing them to do something, wanting them, asking them, even telling them to do something just won't work. It's not enough. The first thing we need to examine is the balance of power in this particular relationship, because of course you, the parent, you have the real power. It's your house, your money, your rules, you have all the experience. So how come they end up getting their way so often and getting exactly what they want? And that's because they are masters at getting the perception of power in their favour. And as we've looked at in other videos about power, is that there are two sorts of power. There's real power and perceived power. And perceived power is way more influential than real power. So the next question is, how do you get that perception of power back in your favour? And there are some quite simple but really effective things that you can do to get that perceived power back in your balance. We've talked about the power laws in some of the other videos about power, and there are two of those power laws that really apply nicely to these negotiations with your kids. And the first is the law of reciprocity, and all that really says that if you want them to do something, then you have to be prepared to do it yourself. Telling someone to do something, it doesn't matter how much real power you've got, there comes a point where they just on principle won't do it, and if they do, they feel awful. It's a real battle. So you've got to be prepared to do it yourself, and kids especially, because the thing about kids is they have a really finely tuned hypocrisy radar, and if you're asking them to do something which you're not prepared to do, or that you haven't done yourself, they're going to be straight on it and they'll throw it straight back at you. So demonstrate the way to go, demonstrate the behaviour that you want from them, and it's much easier then to expect it from them. The other power law, which works really nicely with kids, is the law of difference. And what this says, that if you give people a choice of yes or no, there's a really good chance that they'll choose no. If you tell kids, if you ask them if they want to do it, or even tell them that you want them to do it, they're going to chuck no straight back at you on the assumption that they don't want to do it. Instead, if you give them a choice of A or B, it's the power of choice. They actually feel like they have some control, even though it's your choices which you're giving them. So give them options of timescales. Let them apply their own deadlines, for example. They feel like they're in control. They feel like they've got power. But make sure that all the choices, all the options work for you, just in case they choose the unexpected one, which does happen sometimes. Here's another thing that I want you to really try hard not to do when you're negotiating with your kids, and that is, in fact, the same as any other negotiation, is I need you to resist the urge to justify. How good are kids at saying why? So you tell them that they've got to leave the playground in 5 minutes, or the telly goes off now. What they say is, why? And of course, what you say is, well, because I need you to come over here and wash your hands or whatever. They'll just start arguing with those other things. And once again, that's where the battle starts and the argument. Then you're arguing about washing hands rather than turning the television off. So that's why so many parents find themselves saying things like, "'cause I said so." And that's no good either, because that feels them leaving really frustrated with that whole situation. So the way to get around this is with a bit of preconditioning. So it's laying out the rules in advance. When they're watching telly, when they're in the playground, or whatever's happening, they know how long it's for. Aim for the stars a little bit as well. If it's for 15 minutes, tell them they're going to have 10 minutes. And then when they get 15, they're going to feel much better about it than just when the 15 minutes is up without any warning and they've got to leave. It's the same end result, but by preconditioning, by letting them know in advance, And by not justifying, then you're more likely to get the outcome, and perversely, they're more likely to feel better about it as well. There's another thing to bear in mind when you negotiate with your kids, and that is to put yourself in their position. I'll give you an example. Let's say it's bedtime. You need them to go to bed. The battle's started. They don't want to go to bed. They want to stay up. What you might find yourself saying is, look, you're tired, you're grumpy, you're ratty, you're in a bad mood. It's because you're tired, you need to go to bed. What happens then is they'll say, no, I'm not tired. And then it's an argument about whether they're tired or not about whether they're going to bed or not. Well, think about it from your situation. What happens if your other half says to you at the end of the evening, look, you're being a bit ratty, I think you're tired, I think you should go to bed. That doesn't feel great. And a lot of people would rather stay up just on principle, just to prove a point that they're not ratty and that they're not tired. Well, it's no different for kids. So don't get into the argument about whether they're tired or not. You can't tell them how they feel. Instead, give them an incentive for going to bed. Depending on the age of the kids, it might be that you'll read them a story or whatever it may be, rather than arguing about the things which you're never going to reach an agreement on anyway. One last one for you. You can play kids at their own game. And what I mean by that is that kids have a really heightened sense of fairness and injustice. And they want things to be fair. And more than that, they want themselves to be seen as being fair. They don't like unfairness, and they don't want to be seen to be the ones who are unfair. So you can really use that. So tell them that what you're proposing is fair. Just by saying it sometimes can work. Ask them, tell them they're being unfair. They don't really like that. That can help to get a bit of cooperation out of them. So play the fairness card. So in summary, don't try and fight those mad March hares. You'll probably end up flat in your face, and they'll know they've won. So instead, you're in control. So retain control, keep calm. Now, if you've got any tips, if I've missed anything that works when you are negotiating with your kids, please let me know in the comment section. I'll be really pleased to hear from you.